Democrats hoping to face President Trump in next year's election are flocking to a key primary state later this week.
22 presidential candidates are set to attend Congressman Jim Clyburn's world-famous fish fry. It's this Friday in South Carolina. The state's primary is the fourth presidential primary contest in the nation and the last before Super Tuesday next March. So earlier on CBSN AM, I spoke with Caitlin Huey-Burns about what to expect.
This is going to be where everybody is in the political universe this weekend. You mentioned 22 candidates expected to be here in Columbia. That is the most candidates that we have seen in the same place at the same time. And this is going to be a venue where Joe Biden will be with all of his rivals for the 2020 nomination. This is an event that Jim Clyburn, the third highest ranking Democrat in the House, the highest ranking African-American member of Congress, hosts this event every year. It started back in the early 90s as a way for him to thank his supporters, a more casual type of dinner compared to that of the annual state party dinner, which happens the same night. And since then, it has really grown into a place that is a critical campaign stop for anybody running for office, but especially presidential candidates. And this cycle in particular, South Carolina is going to play a really critical role. About 60% of voters in the primary in 2016 were African American. Of course, this is a key constituency for Democrats. Everybody has been trying to invest early in South Carolina because they do see it as a gateway to those Super Tuesday states, those larger states, those more diverse states. A lot of strategists I've been talking to here say if a candidate can win here or at least do well, that puts them in a really good position heading into Super Tuesday and could help figure out who wins the actual nomination.
So the leader thus far in pretty much all the polls is Joe Biden. He rolled out a long list of endorsements from South Carolina for South Carolina state lawmakers over the last month. And he also says he could beat Donald Trump in South Carolina. He sort of seems to be almost taking aim at Donald Trump in a number of southern states. That's part of his, it looks like part of his strategy, but certainly South Carolina. Explain to us sort of his connection to that state.
Right. He does have a deep connection to South Carolina, these long ties and relationships that he's had since first running for office about 3 decades ago. Voters here that I've talked to when I've been on the ground earlier this year really have a deep and abiding love for him. What I am wondering, though, is whether as they start to meet these other candidates, how much they're going to stick with Joe Biden. What is his level of support here? We've seen it kind of soften in other early states, but strategists here say that Joe Biden is still very much a beloved figure and should be poised to do well here. But he still has to do a lot of campaigning here, kind of reminding voters about himself, about his campaign, and about what he would do. So look for him on Friday, especially to see kind of how he's received by the crowd. He's been a veteran of this fish fry. He knows kind of how this atmosphere works. It's a very open, friendly atmosphere. A lot of people actually go down the dance floor with some of these candidates, so it'll be interesting to see whether he participates in that, but also to see whether his rivals take any kind of swipe at him in this venue or if they keep their attention on Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's a great question. Voters in early voting states say that they want a candidate that can beat Donald Trump. That's certainly what Joe Biden seems to be sort of pushing for his own message. Do you expect Democrats to take aim at the president as sort of part of their sell here, or will they just focus on their policies?
I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I will say, though, that they are going to have such a limited amount of time to make their case, about 1.5 minutes, really, for each candidate presenting to this crowd. So you kind of have to strategize and figure out if you want to use that short time to go after Trump, to go after Biden, or to present your case. For a lot of these candidates, this is going to be the first time that they can really introduce themselves to people. So they might want to focus on their own biographies or their own policies. Others want to present an air of electability electability. Remember, that's something that we've been talking about, something that's key for a lot of these voters is this idea of having a candidate that can defeat Donald Trump. So look for that too, and I think that will give us a good idea about how these campaigns are kind of strategizing about the path forward. Is it to focus on themselves and their policies? Is it to focus on the president? Or is it to kind of needle out some of those other contenders that might occupy similar lanes to try to get ahead and advance in this primary?
Yeah. You are set to interview the mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, a little bit later on today. Could Stephen Benjamin actually play a role in helping some of these candidates win over voters?
Absolutely. He is becoming kind of a critical voice in this primary. I was at events earlier this year in South Carolina across the state, and he was introducing a lot of these candidates. He's staying neutral for now, but he is seeing his role as a way to kind of help these candidates introduce themselves to South Carolina voters. He obviously knows Columbia really well, as what has his finger on the pulse of the politics here and throughout the state. So he's really emerging as kind of a key figure to watch and see whether and if he endorses anybody in this race. But people have been looking to him as their kind of Sherpa to sit, for lack of a better word, throughout the state.
I actually really like that word, political Sherpa. Guide me to the next person. Caitlin, thank you very much.